which is probably what she gave to us. It's probably, it's a lot of wood. Davy Crockett going on there. It's a lot of wood. So like the Carter Athletic Fund is like restricted for specific uses, for students and programs, and it's annual. A lot of, like here at U of L, it used to be called, probably still is called the 1798 Society, which is $1,000 more or $1,500 more. That's the year U of L was founded. At Bellarmine, it's called the President's Society. So you go for leadership annual fund gifts that are annual, but they're at bigger amounts. You know, I'd rather get $10,000 gifts annually than $10,010 gifts. You know what I mean? It's easier to get the bigger ones. So you go for leadership. So then it blurs line between, is it a major gift or an annual gift? But it's pretty much if it's used for unrestricted purposes on an annual basis. They come through personal solicitations. We do sit down and talk to people about that. Through mail, phone, email, social media. More and more you're seeing stuff on. We do a lot with Twitter, with Facebook. The Day of Giving, U of L just had theirs like 2 weeks ago. Day of Giving, they try to, there's a citywide one about a month ago where all those different charities did it. So it's a new thing. It's like a telethon on social media. We do one in the spring. We broke ours with Department of Else's to try to get more notice for it. So annual fund, does that make sense? Annual fund. Think of the phonathon, think of the letter, the junk mail you get. People always say, why do you keep mailing me? Because it works. That's the best answer. Why do y'all keep calling me? When it quits working, we'll quit calling you. You know? You call this room and about 70, you think, God, quit calling me. You 3, you made a pledge. That works. You know. Okay, major giving. This is like the cycle of giving, and this is really fundamental to development. You need to identify somebody. And he mentioned this in the book. I give Crawford credit. He touched on this. You need to research them. You need to cultivate them. You need to solicit them, and then you need to steward them. And if you steward them right, they go right back into the circle again, and it keeps working. I argue there's one more in here that's closing. Because especially with the major gifts, you solicit the gift. And I've read studies that on a major gift of 6 and 7 or more figures, it takes 18 months to close the gift. So I've done this dance with you for a long time to the point they ask for $1 million. Okay? I've got a guy right now, I asked him for the $1 million 4 years ago. And I really do think I'm going to get it. I haven't quit on it yet. But he has an investment in a very large company that he helped take private, and then they want to sell it back to some investors and go public with it. And when his payday comes, I think we'll get the money. So I continue. He knows. I mean, he's toured the building and everything. He's been through it. But closure can be a really, really long part. We have one, even on a smaller level, a very engaged alumni couple who is very capable of making the gift, and it's the right ask. They've given a lot of gifts, and we asked them for $100,000 about a month and a half ago. And they kind of said, yeah, but we got to talk to our advisor. Well, this one has a deadline, because it's part of the building we're talking about. And we want to name a room, but someone else wants the room. We're trying to push it along. But he has to talk to his advisor. Well, his advisor hasn't gotten back to him yet. You know, so that conversation with his investment advisor, he's up to that when the time is right, and it doesn't really matter with our deadline. But closure is a long thing. Then you steward, you back to identification. You got to research them. Crawford mentioned that. It's scary with red subscriptions, what you can find out about people. You really can. When you buy a Conair hairdryer and you fill out that product information card, or you buy a computer, put the card and send it in, that stuff, companies buy that data and they bring it all together, and then people buy that data, they run it like crazy. There's companies that take, next time you go to your church picnic, or you go to the YMCA day at the zoo or whatever, in the back they list sponsors, right? There's companies that take those, scan them, take the data, sort them, and you can get charitable indexes. You can go back and see that Dr. Giddings gives it on average 5 gifts at $5,000 a year, because I found this company finds them in big data and pulls it back out. If you got enough money, you can buy all that data. You can buy data on where you work. They have predictive models. So if you buy Yacht Magazine and you own property in West Palm Beach, Florida, and your credit card receipts show that you're out of the country 3 months a year, you got a boat, right? And it could say, we have a high probability, even though that boat is funded privately out of money your grandmother gave you, so nobody ever saw that money come in. We're pretty sure you have a boat, right? And that you're out sailing on a yacht for 3 months a year. So they can, there's a big grid, like this is rich and this is poor and this is urban and this is rural. And they predict you into the 100 grids. Like this would be the city mouse or the country mouse, the rich city, Brooklyn, or Gold Coast, Chicago, and this is the poorest person in the poorest part of the country, and vice versa. But then, soccer moms, young unmarried, athletic types, all these different categories, and then you use that to predict on how to find out information about it. So you're going to start a new, I'm making this up right now, you're going to start a new athletic program, let's say men's lacrosse, and then you go out, you could buy all the stuff, and they can say, I'm pretty sure the few people here all played lacrosse in college and are lacrosse donors. So you can find that kind of data. So there's research. Now we don't, you can also spend, you could need, all that's possible, it's not probable. But we have a researcher that looks stuff up and finds stuff. If you're a public company, it's really very obvious. If you've worked for GE your whole life as an officer, I can find out everything about you. If you've worked for you and your brother started a business and it's worth $100 million, but it's still about you and your brother, there's nothing out there on you. Because it's private. So if you have any kind of public money, you can find it. So then I mentioned plan gifts. I had annual gifts, major gifts, and plan gifts. Plan gifts take the form of wills and bequests, trusts, life insurance, annuities, which are, so people with wealth, especially as they get older, are looking for ways to make gifts. So they've established affinities with lots of organizations, and they can save a lot on taxes. So appreciated stock, let's say, this for example. If I bought a stock at $1, and now it's worth $10, I've got to pay tax on that $9 increase when I sell it. Okay, so I sell it for 10, and I got to pay 30% tax on it, so I only have 7 left. If I give that appreciated stock away, I give them a $10 gift. Not only do I don't pay taxes on it, but I get the deduction for $10. So it works. It's a very. One consultant told me one time, anybody who gives you a check at the end of the year for like more than $5,000, send it back and say, send me stocks. Because it's, so we have 2 people who do this, plan gifts in their wills. They set up trusts so that their money can pass to if you set up a charitable trust, you can pass a lot of money to your heirs and pay a lot less in taxes. And it's all legal, it's 100% legal. People with a lot of wealth want to do a lot of this. Schools that have made, U of L has, when I worked here at U of L, a person walked in my office. We knew of this couple, the trust officer walked in, they had passed away, and there's a $7.5 million trust that we were the beneficiary of. It's like, look for scholarships in the med school. So that's the plan. Am I doing around town?
No, you're good.
Okay.
6 o'clock.
So a lot of these go to endowment. Does anybody know what endowments are? You hear that word a lot, but anybody here could give you a definition of what an endowment is? Because everybody talks about it, but it's hard. Nobody really knows what they are. So an endowment is, and let's play at the $100,000 level because it's an easy number. And I'm a history major, and it does my me to math a lot easier. But when you give an endowment, so you all have all heard about those endowed funds. And U of L's got a lot of endowments. There's Bucks for Brains 10 years, 20 years ago, where you can match your endowments. And there's all that talk in the paper about how the endowment hasn't been spent properly. But we'll go in the simplest of ways here. That Dr. Parton gives $100,000 for scholarship in the School of Education master's students. Okay, so her $100,000 is given to the university, and by law, it's a covenant that's set up, and a gift agreement is written. That money can never be touched. The corpus belongs to the university, gifted by Dr. Parton, but the university has to use it in a certain way. And what the university does then is they take her endowment and yours and yours and yours, and they pool them all together into a big fund. And they invest it like a portfolio would be. Some, large cap, small cap, international, whatever, like you do your investment, like your retirement fund. But every year, the proceeds from an endowment, and the typical figure is 5%. They have to give 5% back to the cause. So her $100,000 endowment, we never touched the corpus. but every year $5,000 comes out for that scholarship for the school of ed student. Every year for history, forever and ever and ever. So an endowment is a different kind of gift. You set up something in perpetuity, and you leave a legacy behind when you do an endowment. So the difference would be, somebody says, let's only give us $5,000. Well, yeah, well, then I could ask you for $5,000 and then do it again. Well, then 3 years later, you know, she moves away, and all of a sudden we're down that scholarship. So the university can plan that. And again, I'm talking small numbers here, but there's lots in the endowment. They can then plan on it. The School of Ed might know they have annual endowment revenues of $1.5 million for these 3 chairs and these 2 scholarships. And they can then plan. They can plan the students coming in. You can't leave, especially undergrad, you can't bring in a student on a scholarship if you don't get through 4 years. I mean, that's a pretty odd scholarship that says, we're glad you're here. You know, now next your sophomore year, you're done. But so that's what endowment does. Now, the other part of the endowment is once upon a time, the stock market did more than 5% a year. Now it's been doing 5% a year for a couple of years. But let's say the stock market makes 9%, the returns. That big pool of money, the university brings in 9%. So your $100,000 fund, we gave 5 away. The remaining 4% goes back into her fund. So in year 2, it's worth $104,000. So then 5%, then it compounds. So 5% of 104,000 is, you know, 5,100. So then it becomes a compounding interest over time. So here's an illustration. So this math is on an 8.5%. This is a couple years ago when I found this one. But here's a $100,000 fund. In year 1, 5%, 5,000 comes off of it. So 15 years later, the amount that the endowment earned over 5% has earned this fund $64,000 more dollars. So 5% of that is $7,300. Okay. So now 25 years later, it's the base of the fund. So the corpus is 100,000. There's been 116, 520 added to it, so the book value is now 216, and it's popping out 9,700. Well, schools like Duke and Notre Dame and Center here in Kentucky and Berea and you know, the Ivy Leagues, and anybody who's been around forever have these 50 and 100-year-old endowments. Okay, so this person here did this back in 1950. Well, this thing is worth $431,000 now, giving out $20,000 a year, and that's where these older endowed schools have so much endowment money because it grows over time. That's also why some schools got creamed in the recession, because the East Coast really rich endowment school that had massive endowments, when that fund balance went from 431 and the market crashed and it went to $200,000, they built the whole program on $20,000 and then only popped out 10 next year. Does that make sense? So when that book value goes down, and in theory, that endowment can go underwater. I mean, in theory, there is a risk. You know, when you give that $100,000 university, especially with big money, and that's a problem you've always going to face with the endowment problems they've had. If you're a $10 million donor, you're not sure that money's been going lately, and that's a credibility issue that I'm not disparaging what's going on here, but I'm glad I'm not in fundraising here anymore, because that's a credibility issue that you really have to work on, and keeping that donor relationship, that credibility is a big part of it. Yeah.
As a donor, can you say, like, I don't want it to be in part of the endowment, I want it to stay separate and, you know, not take the risk?
Oh yeah, you don't have to put an endowment.
Okay.
So endowment's a choice. So what you can do is you can give me $100,000 and say I want to do scholarships, and I'm going to say fine, let's budget it out at $5,000 a year, and in 20 years it's gone. Now usually what happens is, in that case, is very few donors think of that way to put it, because you wouldn't put your money with me not being invested for 20 years, because you keep it yourself invested and give it to me annually. So what happens then is you might give $100,000 to start a program, but then we have to figure out. Sometimes you have to really look at, do you want the gift? Because I don't want to stop the program in 2 years. So we take back to I mentioned foundations. They want to give money to programs that you will take and then sustain. So we did one on student success. We wanted to really work on increasing our freshman to sophomore year retention rate through faculty development, to put better faculty that are trained making up for Dr. Parton's teaching a freshman class, she might be the expert in assessment, doesn't know a thing about keeping why that student's having trouble with housing and why they're going to leave and go back home. So what we're doing now is we're giving training so that she can then do a better job in the classroom with that students they retain. And we go back to that foundation and show a couple years later that our freshman, sophomore year retention rate went from 82% to 83%. So we saw the needle go a little bit. And when that is a 4-year grant, and when it runs out, they want to see us that we've picked it up into our budget and we're going to carry it on. Okay? So where endowment is great, you can budget on endowments. And I can sell to you as in perpetuity. Now, when you say take the risk, I can show you Bellarmine's 50 years of financial doing and how we've done well for all those years with a relatively small endowment. But there is a risk involved. And that's why donor relation is so important. You don't know what tomorrow holds, but you make your best bet. The same way you can take that money you have, so you're wealthy, that money you have, you invest it in GE. Well, it makes sense that GE is open tomorrow, but maybe they're not. You're just making your best guess. Yes?
So I've heard about donors who put caveats on their funding. They'll say it can only be spent in such a way, and I want to participate. Can you give us some examples? Because I'm just curious.
Yeah, so every endowment has a certain caveat. My goal is to make it as broad as it can possibly be, right? But lots of donors want to come in and make it really focused. And then if you get too much in the weeds, the general idea might be, I'll make one up here. So I want to see kids from the West End of Louisville succeed at U of L. So I want to fund money, and I know Bob Blair at the West End Boys School. Okay, a great place out there. I want to fund an endowment for kids who graduate the West End Boys School to come to U of L. Okay, that sounds great right now. But you got the big caveat is what happens in 10 years when that West End school's not doing as well, or is out of business, or it got hit by a tornado, or whatever, So or 50 years. So what I would do is I would push that to say, okay, we want to push this to have underprivileged youth from the West End of Louisville or similar areas of Louisville. Because what if by some miraculous thing in 50 years there's been renewal, and the East End is where the problems are, and the West End is perfect, right? When my dad grew up, the West End was not like it is today. So things change. So you say the West End or similar to give an underprivileged student to come to a program at U of L like education or similar. And then you say something like, or you say for the law school, and at some point the law school is not in existence, it would go for another use. And you might even say we would try to, the donor's family would attempt to be found, and it's the new use determined. If not, then it'd be the best guess of the president. So you create the caveat, but you got to have outs to it. And actually, I have a real example of that. We fixed this, and it was our fault. We didn't have the documents written the right way. It wasn't that much money, but we had a long-standing mock trial team at Bellarmine, and a bunch of alums of the program created a mock trial fund in the name of the coaches at Bellarmine. Okay, well, those coaches have retired, and the mock trial is not as big anymore. Moot court is bigger. I don't know. That's just what they tell me. So now there's like the mock trial isn't happening as much, and there's an endowment for it. And when we first had it done, we didn't make it. It has now been changed, and we had all the donors signed to this. And now it's going to say mock trial or pre-law programs for similar students, so that when it doesn't exist anymore, you can get out. Because what happens is you'll read about it, is you'll hear all the time of these endowments that can't get unwound because they're far too specific.
And so they really do have to have trust in the
There has to
person
be
who's
trust,
guiding them, and there is an obvious issue if there's credibility.
And the fact is, though, we haven't gotten to the stage of you giving me $1 million if that's not there. And if your donor intent, and when I say, well, we need to work this out, because if that mock trial program for $1 million isn't around, we'll work at pre-law, or even then maybe the liberal arts that do careers like law or something. Then you're gonna say, well, that makes sense, yeah, because when my grandkids, because you're doing this for your grandkids and your great-grandkids. And that's the cool part, is that those endowments are around forever. And usually, so what you want to do is make them really broad with an ideal focus, but you're not stuck to it. When I was here, we had a thing where we went through the endowments. We found a bunch that were ungivable. Some were they were old. Some were racial in tone. For a white student in Shelby County, we just can't do that one anymore, right? You know, some were for the home economics program, you know, and there wasn't an out written in it when it was written. So those you take to a judge, and the judge then will then, if there's no errors or anybody you can't find, the judge will take them and write a court order and release them to the general endowment. And the university also has general endowment that can be for, that's an investment account that comes back out again. That make sense? It's tricky. You love endowment kits. Now, see, Bellarmine only has an endowment about $52 million. We've been building. We're young. We started in 1950. We've been building our campus, and a place like Bellarmine. Here's a great difference between big and small. It was in the paper this past week that there's a new classroom building on Belknap campus for $80 million, and that'll come from state bonds. So the state has the power to issue bonds, borrow money from themselves, and pay the bonds off, and tax revenues pay those bonds off. And it's a great thing, because you go out and build that building. Hell, it took me 20 years to raise $80 million for a building, because the only buildings we can borrow tax-free. We can get our own bonds, and we borrow tax-free. We have built some phenomenal dorms, but dorms have a revenue stream, and that revenue stream can pay the bonds. We built a great dining hall, has a revenue stream. So, but this new classroom building has an indirect revenue stream, so we don't borrow money for them. So that's a huge difference on the borrowing piece. So another type of playing gift is an endowed scholarship. This is, oh, sorry.
Question. So, like, if we have accounts, you know, like a gift account money, so people just give you money and then they don't have any restriction. So in the end, can we put that gift back into the endowment, or we have to talk to the original donor?
You kind of can, okay? So, like, you're in the dental school, right?
Yeah.
So there might be gift accounts that probably came from the annual fund or something.
Yeah.
This is for your all's use, right? If there's extras, at Bellarmine at least, there's a thing called quasi-endowment, okay? And in quasi-endowment, okay, so let's say you all created a surplus, and you got $50,000 in that account, and you'd rather save it, like put money in your savings account. You could, since it has to be donor designated, and it's impossible to go back to all those donors and get that redesignated, but you could put that money in a quasi-endowment, so it behaves like an endowment. So what it's doing is it's following the same investment strategy of the whole endowment account, and it's paying out 5%, but it doesn't have those restrictions, and in theory you can pull it back out of quasi-endowment.
Yes.
So you can mirror the account and put it there. Kind of like if you you've got your IRA set up,
Yeah.
if you put some extra money in an account right next, that looks just like it. You know, you can't pull the IRA out until you're 70 and a half, right? But you can pull their other one out if you wanted to. Otherwise it makes money the same way. So go ahead.
Does it ever happen that one part of the university that may be suffering due to lack of funds or the budget cuts, but the university has a lot of endowment reserves? So can they use those reserves to fund that particular area that is suffering, or they cannot?
If they have enough undesignated endowments. So let's say that 90% of the endowments at U of L were given to athletics and the med school. I'm just making that up. Okay, so they're all in a pipe. But so let's say they're dedicated for athletics and the med school. And in the meantime, the School of Ed and the School of Social Work and the Arts and Science are just suffering like crazy. Well, those are restricted endowments, so they can't be. So what will happen is that part of the place stays afloat and the rest really suffers if the university can't find other budget ways to cover it. Now, some schools have bigger general endowment funds. At Bellarmine, about half of ours is general endowment. We've had a lot of donors who have given to it generally. And we could transfer those monies over. But the irony is since those are endowment monies, they're part of a budget already. So I don't know, maybe the Princetons or Yales of the world can't spend all their money. They have endowments that are so big Like they're $100 million endowments. They're popping out more a day, I think, than Bellarmine's operating budget is. It's like crazy how big their endowments are. But if they're all structured, my example of Phil Knight at Oregon, it's all for this new program he made. So the Arts and Science School at Oregon can go to pot, and that Phil Knight School is still fantastic. At my alma mater, Notre Dame, right after I graduated, what was her name? It was Ray Kroc and was his wife. They started McDonald's, and they were very wealthy, and a lot of people were beneficiaries. And I knew it because St. Jude was a beneficiary. They gave $40 million to Notre Dame to start a Peace Institute. It's the Kroc Peace Institute. So it's one of the most well-endowed peace studies programs in the country, but it's just for peace studies. You know, it can't go to arts and sciences, can't go to education, can't go to law or anything else. It's just for peace studies. So it's restricted. So very few people, back to your question on the risk, very few want to give $50 million unrestricted. You want to go back to those first slides and you want to change something. You know, your passion is the written word in the English language. And your passion is that you want students to learn to write, and composition is important. Well, I mean, you can make great use of that. You could develop huge programs around that. And maybe over time you could move that money and be clever with it and still stay true to the cause. But that can't be used for the med school.
What if this, I mean, this is kind of an extreme hypothetical, but like, for instance, like St. Catherine's, closed down. What if like one aspect of that school, or maybe just their social work school or something like that, had this massive endowment, but it was so locked in that the rest of the college kind of suffered?
That's interesting. I don't really know. I don't know, in bankruptcy, I bet you when they went bankrupt, the whole thing got unwound.
Yeah.
And those were probably then back to creditors. Now, in their case, they borrowed way too much money. They did the opposite of what we did. They have a beautiful library there. It's like $10 million. They had $1 million raised for it. The rest they borrowed on it. They borrowed $9 million in a library. So that's what happens when you borrow, because they couldn't make the notes last. Yes?
I have a related question. I was listening to a study recently about, it was comparing a new program that Stanford's trying to start, where the president's trying to raise $800 million for a graduate student program that would serve essentially 100 students. They're comparing it to a $100 million gift for a tiny public college in New Jersey, where it, like, thousands and thousands and thousands of students it was serving. And it's talking about how, like, money can be used for like the bulk of students who really need it, but you were kind of speaking to this at the beginning as well, like the change maker, this is the only program, the only type of program, there's nothing like it in the world, and so it's kind of shinier.
Yeah.
So how do you think, like, how does that work at Bellarmine? How do you interpret the use of funds, and how does that influence how you communicate with the purpose of?
That's a great question. That's what's happening is the rich are getting richer. And really, in higher ed, and they put those programs together, and I'm like I said, I'm a Notre Dame guy. I love the football team. I wish we were good. And you walk a place, and Jay McGowan, our president who died last year, was a Notre Dame grad as well. He loved Notre Dame, but he said Notre Dame was the worst thing that happened to private Catholic education because nobody else could touch it. It's like Disney, it's like Wizard of Oz and Disney put together. Every freaking sidewalk's cobbled. It's like, give me a break. Like a patch our cracks, and they have cobblestones. They're perfect and beautiful. But people like that. Some people who are of that set keep giving back to that set, and I'm really jealous. And I wish I had that set that wants to get the Bellarmine all day long. But I guarantee you, $5 million at Notre Dame, $5 million here would be twice as big as $5 million at Notre Dame, and $5 million at Bellarmine would be 5 times bigger than it would be here. I mean, it's the impact it gives, and I'm always, as one who works in the field, if I was a philanthropist, I would want to give where you could really see your money making a difference. And then somebody say, well, Bellarmine's a rich school, why did we get to St. Catherine? And then they say, well, why don't you give to the community college in E-Town? Then they say, well, no, we should give money to the mountaintop school in West Virginia. So you can play that game the whole way down the line to wherever, to some mission school somewhere that survives on $1 a day. But, that's the whole question of where you want your impact to be. So what I do is I sell the impact we have. I talk about We don't have that many, you know, we're in the last $5 million, $100 million campaign, and we only have 20 gifts at $1 million. You know, we've raised this thing through 100,000s and 200,000s and 500,000s. Those are our typical big gifts, which is a really backwards campaign because you probably want 50% in before you can start. We don't have that. I asked one of our richest guys for $20 million. I still think he can do it, but he said, Glenn, I'm rich. He goes, I'm rich, and you know that. He is rich, okay? He says, but I'm a tens of million dollar rich guy. I'm not $100 million, hundreds of million dollar rich guy. And he says, maybe in the market I'll be $100 million rich guy, but I'm not a hundreds of million dollar rich guy. I'm a tens of million dollar rich guy. Which I mean, it's all relative. You know what I'm saying? If your net worth is $100,000, you're not giving me $50,000. You know what I'm saying? So if his net worth is $50 million, he's not giving me 20. He's not giving me 40% of his net worth. That's ridiculous. You know, maybe in his will. You know, so it's a whole series of relatives that are lined up. You know, whereas the pool I play in, you know, there's other college. You know, you go to Union College in Kentucky or Cumberland College, and they think that Bellarmine's the Yale of, like the way I look at Yale, and they think y'all are so rich. You know, like we're not really, but it's all relative. It's in your neighborhood. There's people who are poorer than you, richer than you. You know, it's the same game. Does that make sense or not? Or
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So this is a short. It's a minute and a half or a minute 19, but it's a really cool. This is what an endowed scholarship. Is there volume on this? What?
Yeah, it should be on already. So I think you have to probably click it on the, just use the mouse. Click the play button.
I love the story, but hate the music.
I wanted to give something to my husband for Christmas. And he's one of those guys that you reach a stage in life where you kind of have everything, or the only thing he wants is so far out of reach, I wouldn't even know how to buy it. And I had the idea of either getting him a really cool sports car or starting a scholarship at Bellarmine. And it was the first time in all of our 26 years of marriage that I'd ever seen my husband get tears in his eyes.
It was the greatest present I'd ever been given, other than the birth of a child. I was going to be able to have something that continued on when I was gone.
When you can see something, a contribution you make in action and actually get that feedback from them, it makes it so rewarding for us. I think we get more out of it than they do.
I think it's important to consider endowment scholarships as an opportunity to leave your legacy. I know as a recipient of that scholarship that it changed my whole experience, and knowing that I had a little bit of comfort and also support as a mentor.
My biggest frustration, if there is one, is I can't give enough to get as many students in it as I would like to have. The group that runs this university together with the students, that is what makes us such a great university. It's a joint effort.